Well, here we are, Michael. A mere 49 and a half years since we both arrived during the first week of November 1974. Do you remember what brought you here, Michael?
Do I remember what?
Oh, I should also say that the day is the 6th of April, 2024. And I'm asking you, do you remember what brought you here 49 and a half years ago?
Yes. I was I at that point I was working for Balfour Beattie, which is a large construction company, and I'd sort of had it with what we were doing because I had read the Donella Meadows and book called Limits to Growth, and I realized as I actually bought it, or no, was given it on a flight between Sydney, Australia, and London, and I read the book the whole journey, and was horrified because I kept flying over sort of the sins of Balfour Beattie, the sins of Michael Shaw within Balfour Beattie, taking the tops off of mountains, digging mines, digging tunnels, digging all sorts of stuff. So when I got to London, I was a sort of changed person.
Wow.
Well, changed person in not maybe not fundamentally, but changed person in I sort of woke up to exactly how I was spending my life.
And what do you think? What did Findhorn offer by way of a counterexample, if anything? I mean, is that why Findhorn?
Escape.
You just wanted to escape your old life. And
I wanted to escape. I wanted to complete. I persuaded Balfour Beattie to give me a sabbatical year to sort myself out. You sort of mean. And just before I sort of came up here, I was headhunted. Somebody wanted to pay me a lot of money to leave Balfour Beattie and join them. So that was a salutary moment. So do I sort of change gears a little bit for more money, or do I go to Findhorn, which was going to cost me money? But that was okay. So the choice was pretty easy. And I was advised by John Hilton, who was one of the early trustees and a bank manager and a Gurdjieff person. And so we understood one another's language at that point. So he held me. He held my hand.
Because you were also a Gurdjieff person, as I recall.
Yes.
Then.
Then. Yeah, I mean, I still, I did one of the Gurdjieff exercises this morning. It's just, these things stay with you for your life.
Oh, well. Are you still into super effort?
I'm less into a super effort. Because the thing about a super effort is you think you are making the effort, where I've realized in recent years, there is no you to make the super effort. So the super effort is just part of my imagination, what's sometimes called my finite mind.
Well, you may recall that we spent some time together in park maintenance, as I faintly recall. And of course, our focalizer, Raymond Ackhurst, was also into Gurdjieff.
Yes.
As I recall, we were trying to self-remember on the hour.
That is correct.
Usually failing miserably, but it became the food of our weekly attunements.
Correct.
We would reprise our experience with failing to self-remember, as I recall, on the hour.
And you may remember we had an old empty oxygen cylinder, which we banged with a hammer, hanging out the maintenance, and that you could hear the thing race around what was then the community. It was long before the East Winds or Doodland or anything like that. And I still have that, oxygen cylinder.
Really?
Yes.
We bang the oxygen cylinder on the hour to self-remember.
Yes, that's what I need to do now. I need to hang it up in our outdoor kitchen so I can, and I'm sure the kids will bang it all the time, which will probably drive us crazy.
Well, Michael, do you remember? I mean, you remember the early days. What do you remember most about the early days?
Well, I remember, I'd come off running, or big part of an international business. So I traveled a huge amount in the couple of years before I came to Findhorn. I mean, I was never in any country more than 2 or 3 weeks, including the UK. So when we got here, I don't know whether you remember, but we were told not to leave the park for 16 weeks.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No.
So 16 weeks. So, and yeah, and I managed to do that, except a gold friend who was an employee of Balfour Beattie died. And I felt I should go to the funeral. And he was Salvation Army, and it was amazing. The Salvation Army band and a whole huge group of people walked through the town of Paisley, where he was a Salvation Army man. And it was a very moving occasion. And I realized, Findhorn wasn't the only place that had community.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, as I recall, we were both drawn to what was then an incipient effort, the first effort, in fact, uh, to regard Findhorn as being a Western mystery school. And that, in fact, our program was well, it was what Teilhard de Chardin, predominantly, and Alice Bailey, and so forth. So they were trying to institute a kind of a new age or a mystery school curriculum. Do you think they succeeded?
Well, I think they did in a very remarkable way, because they were lucky with these two gentlemen. One was Francois Duquesne, and the other was Michael Lindfield. And they were particularly into the sort of Western mystery arcane school, which was sort of paralleled by the Gurdjieff work. It's the same sort of period. Madame Blavatsky of that particular Theosophical Society school and Gurdjieff were born in the same year, 1879.
Well, that is interesting, isn't it?
I thought it was interesting at the time. And anyway, I was never really into Madame Blavatsky and treatise of white magic and all that sort of stuff. Alice Bailey, Annie Besant. I mean, I went along with it, but it never really touched me the way that the Gurdjieff work did.
Well, I was a part of all that stuff, and I wasn't particularly happy with the way they were trying to teach it. But I do recall that our group was magical. There were 30 of us, I think, from all over the world, and we were mostly in our 20s and 30s, as I recall.
I was 35.
And I was 32, as I recall, when I arrived. Yeah. Yes. But many of our compatriots were in the 20s.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's true.
it was a remarkable 3 months program, which I was instrumental in rearranging, shall we say. But yes, remarkable days, wonderful days. So I wanted to ask you primarily why you stayed, but you've been here now for a long time. You came for a long time. You stayed for a long time. You stayed for
a long time, yeah. Well, I stayed for the rest of the 70s into the 80s, into the early 80s. It just, it was, for me, it was escape. It was escape from the business. It was escape from my family to some extent. And it just, I sort of loved the alternative life. I loved the, getting up in the morning and going and, holding hands in a maintenance shed for a couple of minutes and then going off and doing this. And there was some amazing sort of, if you like, synchronicities happened at that time, which was quite empowering in a way. So, after a year, I managed to sway them to give me a second year. And after that, I realized I'd come to the end of my corporate life, as it were. Yeah. And interestingly enough, all my old friends for that time have died.
That's attractive in its
Well,
own.
they saw it to the end. They saw it through to 65 and, had large houses in London. But they just conked out.
Whereas you're still going strong.
Well, you and I are still around. Let's say that.
I want to just say, Michael, that you were instrumental in leadership of the community at that point in time. I mean, you served for what, 35 years as chair of the trustees?
Well, I wasn't chair for that time. I was a trustee for that time. And I was in the chair for, I can't remember, 10 or 15 years, something like that. Yeah. And that was all Peter. I mean, Peter was my great role model. I mean, he was a remarkable leader in his own unique way. It wasn't as if he wasn't very strong and demanding and all the rest of it, but he had a huge humanity about him. He was immensely kind and aware and totally dedicated to the community.
Indeed, he was. But he'd also, and indeed, for the 70s, it was his community, really.
It really was. He set the pace along with Eileen. I mean, Eileen's sort of turn within and Peter's turn without worked pretty well.
Great combination indeed. Anyway, so you left, I think, well, Peter left in 79, you stayed on to the early 80s, as I recall. And once again, I just want to commend you really on your perseverance and your work as a facilitator and a leader, because you were and you still are, really.
Well, thank you, Roger.
My pleasure. It's been a real pleasure to observe the way that you were able to address and largely solve the unending practical challenges which we faced. You are a practical genius, Michael. I just want to say that because I believe it. I also want to say, I want to ask you what you think Findhorn is today. I mean, do you think it still has something to offer the world, the larger world?
I mean, the answer is yes, and in many ways, it's more sort of Eileen focused than Peter focused. I mean, we're not exactly expert in the things that Peter was expert in. It would be great if we were, but we're not. We're in a bit of a mess from a sort of organizational point of view, and there isn't any clear leader. And I'm hoping what's emerging is a clear leadership that can be a combination of people that will take us the next step, as it were. Yeah.
Can you say something about what you feel we could or do still offer to the world?
Okay, I think we offer that it's okay, and it's actually beneficial to the planet and beneficial to ourselves to be sort of true to our knitting, as it were. So that involves, stressing the inner life before the outer life in some ways. It involves, and I got a little quotation here. I've been reading Thomas Merton for the last few months.
Thomas Merton being a prominent Catholic monk.
He was a Cistercian monk in an order called Gethsemane in Kentucky. And he was a remarkable man, an author of many books. He was really a writer, and his books are very inspiring. So I've read one this year, and this is what he said at the end of one of his books. There is nothing further to look for. There is nothing further to look for except the deepening of this life we already possess. Except the deepening of this life we already possess. And I think that's what Findhorn can offer. That a stressing that we're not, superficially, we're not all that brilliant. We have built some nice houses and that Universal Hall and all that sort of stuff. But I think we give people encouragement, permission, support, whatever it is, like to deepening of this life which we already possess. So it's the deepening part that we can give people the opportunity to embrace. It's not evangelical. It's not trying to convince anything against the will. But when you come here, then you can sort of melt into what this place is about. And my good friend, who's my next door neighbor, Patrick McNamara, who actually lives in one of your vast properties, he comes here from working in the UN, which is, he says, is incredibly hectic and very outward oriented. He says, I come here to get sane. I come here for a week where I'm not responsible for anything for a week. And it's just the silence of the place. It's the solitude of the place that he loves. So he travels all the way from, to Strasbourg, where he lives, Geneva, to Findhorn. And that's a journey I think a lot of people like to make.
Well, unfortunately, Patrick has just left us to return to Strasbourg and Geneva, where he will carry on his work with the UN. But in any case, thank you, Michael. It's been a very fascinating 20 minutes, and I think we should probably wrap there. And once again, thank you so much for being here on an ongoing basis.
All right. Thank you.
You're one of the Findhorn treasures. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.